Hi, kids. So, in the last couple of weeks, we've been looking at the last few days and hours of the life of Jesus before he got crucified.
So 2 weeks ago, we looked at Palm Sunday, where Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, and people were lining up on the streets, waving palm leaves and shouting, "Oh, hail the King!" And it was an exciting time for everybody in Jerusalem and for his disciples to see that. And last week we looked at the story of the Last Supper, where him and his disciples were sitting in the upper room, and he washed their feet, and he also had bread and wine, where he said that the bread represented his body, and the wine represented his blood, because he was going to lay down his life for us. So today we're going to look at what happened after the supper. So Jesus took some of his disciples to a garden called the Garden of Gethsemane. It was late at night. They were tired. It had been a very long day. Um, Jesus was praying and encouraging his disciples to pray and keep watch, but they were so tired that they kept falling asleep, and he kept trying to encourage them to wake up and pray with him. He continued praying.
And the Bible says that when he was praying, he was so stressed that he was beginning to sweat blood, that he was sweating blood. And that it does happen. Um, and it happens when you're under a lot of strain. You see, Jesus knew what he was about to do, which was to take on the sin of the entire world. Think about all the wrong things you have ever done. If someone were to ask you to pay for those things, it would be pretty impossible. When I think of all the things I've done, I just sometimes I've even forgotten all the wrong things that I've done. So think about every person in the world. Right now, the world population is about 7 billion, and then put that all together, and then put that on one person. That is a lot of sin to put on one person. So Jesus knew that it was not going to be an easy task. It was going to be really painful. So he was praying to God and saying that, take this cup from me if it is your will, but not my will, yours be done. So even though it was a difficult time for him, he still knew um, that God's will must prevail, and he gave himself to the will of God, which is very, very difficult. So sometimes in life we may go through really trying and difficult times, but we should always remember that if it's the will of God, that we will come out of it in a better place, we'll come out of it stronger. And that it doesn't mean that God has left you. God was with Jesus at that time when he was praying. He never left his side. He was there with him, even when he was sweating blood. And we will see when he gets arrested, one of the disciples actually is the one that sold him.
So one of the 12 disciples of Jesus betrayed him. When they were having the Passover meal, he got up from the table and he went to the religious leaders who were wanting to arrest Jesus, and he volunteered information, and they paid him for that. Can you guys remember who that disciple was? What was his name?
So Judas sold Jesus to the Pharisees, and they come when he's there in the garden and he's praying, and they arrest him, and they take him to this crazy trial that wasn't even fair, because Jesus had never done anything wrong. He'd never even lied. The Bible says that he was sinless, like perfect. So we've seen how Jesus got arrested. We've seen how difficult it was for him. But then he went through with it because he loved us. He loved us so much that he gave his life for us. So next week, we are going to be looking at after his trial, we're going to be looking at what happens after that. You guys know the story, but it's a story that involves us. And 2,000 years later, we're still talking about it. And 2,000 years is a long time. So thank you guys for listening. And I do hope next week when we meet for Easter that you will enjoy the story of Jesus and why he came and why he suffered so much for us. Have a nice week.